Cool. Let's get started. Afternoon, everyone. Thanks for everyone for joining. Bit of housekeeping quickly just to run through as per the normal regime, but we're recording the meetup today. So if you prefer to have camera, then no problem at all. And then in terms of structure, we'll head into the talk shortly, and then we'll have time for Q&A at the end, which is either a kind of raise your hand and feel free to speak up, or if you're more comfortable, then pop it into the chat, and we'll go through the questions at the end of the talk. We've got Rishmal and Leo from National Autistic Society today. Quite a poignant topic, I think, with diversity inclusion being a super hot topic at the moment. I think that combined with an employment market which is in uncharted territory, demand far outstripping supply. I think everyone's looking to get creative and have an inclusive and dynamic interview process to really try and, I guess, widen the available talent pool, but also give people the opportunity to really flourish within the organisation as well, which is, I guess, kind of the reason why we thought it was a great opportunity to partner with Rishmal and the team to understand, I guess, kind of two main topics today, and that's firstly how we can innovate and adapt at interview stage and interview process to try and create a more inclusive interview process, and then also some really, from what I would say anyway, from doing this talk before, learning about this talk before, some really kind of subtle and small changes that can make such a big impact into the actual environment that you create within the organisation, both remotely and physically, for staff in an office. So hopefully there'll be some takeaways at the end of the session for everyone to take back to organisations, and obviously, as I said, feel free to ask any questions towards the end. That's enough from me. Rishmal, I'll hand over to you for another introduction.
Hi everybody, thanks so much for having us today. So Leo and I are both from the National Autistic Society. It's the leading charity for autism across the UK, and we're from the employment team. I'll tell you a little bit about our programme. So we currently both work on the Autism at Work programme, and the idea of the programme is to educate employers and to find opportunities for autistic people. Historically, it was very much the case that the National Autistic Society used to support autistic people to look at their CVs, their job descriptions, and navigate sort of neurotypical, what we might call neurotypical interview process. We now realise actually, it's not about this anymore. It's about helping others have more inclusive strategies around recruitment, supporting people with disclosure, feeling empowered to talk about the kind of adjustments that they want. So the way that our programme works is that we work with employers to identify opportunities, we advertise those roles out to our networks, we deliver training, so we help employers understand about what kind of barriers there might be, what you can do at interview, and then once we have a successful candidate in place, we sort of provide that holistic approach in terms of providing that person with the equipment they need in terms to understand what is expected in the workplace and how to navigate some of those things, but also helping the employer to understand the reasonable adjustments that that person needs as well. So we hope that you enjoy the presentation today. We can send you some more information about our programme afterwards as well, but I'm going to hand over to Leo, who will do a fantastic job of taking you through our presentation. Thank you.
Right, gentlemen, start your engines. Okay, right, this is a little schedule for today. We will be making brief stops at looking at what is neurodiversity and what is autism, setting the scene on why we are top formula employees, and actually looking at recruitment adjustment, as well as in a brief moment looking at workplace environment. How does that sound? All okay? Let's go. Right, time to set the scene a bit with what is neurodiversity and what is autism. Okay, right, to start off about neurodiversity and show you where autism fits in, let's look at this pretty diagram from Dr. Amanda Kirby. Basically, autism is part of, and neurodiversity is a set of conditions and the belief that are non-degenerative and sort of actually this whole variation in the human brain regarding a number of different factors. So for instance, sociability, some people might be very social, others not so much. Learning, some people might absorb, for instance, with short pictures and short blocks of text. So that's someone who's dyslexic and autistic. So using infographics is far better than sort of just hitting you with a wall of full force text in the chat box, which could be unleashed at some point. And basically, all of these conditions can interact with each other. And really, sometimes neurodiversity is actually used to say just autism. The reality is it's far wider than that, and I hope this sort of diagram shows that. So moving swiftly on, let's actually look at terminology. Lots of different ways to describe autism and, for instance, disability, but we actually at the National Autistic Society defer to identity first language. And first recruitment tip, I recommend that you actually do the same given the actual ones there. But if you're recording stuff, ask the person what terminology they use or prefer, if you need to use it when speaking with them or will be recording it in important documentation. And because really identity first is actually autistic person, but some people will use person first terminology, which I'm just using the pointer to do a commentator's impression and show you that some people believe that the condition is separate from the actual person, which is why it's used. Not the thing I wouldn't say in any term in any other way is to use the disabled or the autistics point blank. We are autistic people. So thank you for your understanding. There's a little bonus on imagery. Try and watch out with puzzle pieces, as the puzzle piece actually implies that the puzzle autistic people are a puzzle to be solved, when actually we're the full person, which is why we changed our pretty logo from a puzzle piece in the past to a sort of pair of people helping each other to the pretty little cat's eye that we have now. Let's go further forward and actually set the scene on one version of neurodiversity. What is autism? So let's get this slideshow to work. Two key differences in two main areas: social communication and interaction, restricted repetitive patterns of behavior, interests or activities, and sensory processing. Basically, we can either be attracted too much to certain senses or be actually repelled by try to avoid them completely. So years ago, the National Autistic Society and associated partners has held an autism show at London XL. Now, happening on the same weekend was Formula One power boating. So you had with different sensory profiles, you probably have a lot of autistic people holding their ears on one hand, while probably people who are attracted to the gasoline and actually like the sound might have probably asked if we probably get sent feedback saying, why couldn't we go to this, get free tickets to watch the racing too? Or why didn't you do any tie-ins with it? But there you go. And there's other little things around autism. For instance, anxiety. If we live in an intense world, single attention focus, which is what we're famous for. Intense interest, this is where the sort of great little professors come in, and the sort of specialism and differences of executive functioning. My organisation can, which can mean some rather spectacular organisation that can be either Swiss efficiency on one hand or Italian trained on the other hand. Not so great. And we can be perfectionists, which is another unique selling point. And right back at that diagram, other neurodiverse conditions as well. Everyone following with at Shinkansen speed? Excellent. Let's go to our first video, shall we? In fact, that does not seem to be working, but we will have to send it later. So, right, here's, to give you an idea on recruitment, let's see, let's actually give you an idea of some of the things we encourage job seekers to look for. For instance, does an employer actually welcome diverse background and specifically mention disabilities in a job advert? Autism is a disability under the Equality Act. Are there any equal opportunities to declare your condition on an application form or an equality and diversity one? This is important because we encourage people where possible, although we understand why they wouldn't, and there's a situation where they might not want to disclose as early as possible. So giving employers who provide options early are actually pretty good on that score. And otherwise it's some usual question, but key things being, how willing is the employer to make reasonable adjustments? And are there any other little telltales that would say that neurodiverse people are around in the scene? And so let's move on. For example, just giving you a brief idea of reasonable adjustment, which could, by the way, form part of the selection process. We're actually dealing with virtual interviews, and hopefully that is something that will be kept around in certain places. But imagine if you actually do need a face-to-face one, and what actual adjustments could you need? So, for instance, and avoiding fluorescent lighting, and to actually have an interview area where, if possible, there's natural light, and avoiding strong smelling foods in the area. The rest could actually be ones you use in the workplace, because remember, with recruitment, you're looking for a place for a person to not just get past the interview, but settle in. Moving forward, this is just something that actually is worth explaining too, about the cultural environment. Environments aren't physical, and again, with recruitment, it's about sort of picking the right people and the people finding the places. So this is actually information on the environment and people knowing from the outset, knowing where to help and what to ignore. So, for instance, not picking up on a lack of eye contact or someone what's called pulling or ticking in the current. And so just making one thing that could happen at interview, there you go. I've got a tame person actually making my precise point for me. No offense to that person, but actually thank you for that. Because actually it's more like Formula E with autism. In fact, we invented energy management long before Alejandro Agag decided to actually start a cool motor racing series. But this is a lot of this is nothing personal, and it's about making employers aware of that. Because actually, autistic talent and neurodiverse talent has a cool business case for it. So let's have a look at it, shall we? Right, professional. What I'm going to do is just show you the bubbles and make the point that all of these are part of the business case for diversity. Autistic people in the right circumstances with the right employers can be really motivated, can be ferociously productive, and you can understand needs. The late Dinah Murray actually once referred us to as the canaries in the social coal mine, in not those precise words, but if we're having a tough time, then imagine how your non-autistic employees are doing. So, and actually, you get to, otherwise you get to build relationships with people who think differently, and you attract talent that can be powerful in its own right. And you create new opportunities and extra avenues, which, given the sort of employment rate for disabled people generally, which neurodiversity fits under, it's actually something to think about, let alone the employment rate for autistic people. Right. There you go, which is probably why you are here today. Quickly running through the strengths of autistic people. We can be incredibly focused if we need to be, and logical too. These are the sort of top three. In fact, the three ones on the left are actually the ones that give us the sort of supposed Bill Gates or the sort of IT crowd stereotype. But actually, looking at creativity, a survey we did actually showed that autistic people wanted to go to a diverse range of industries. Although with that said, the perfectionism and the sort of different way of thinking does help us in areas like engineering. And some people may be stronger in some field or another, but these are the sort of selling points that we can have that can be applied across all areas. Now, let's just see if this evil machine works. Unfortunately, we seem to have had a little
Leo, it didn't play.
Right.
Finish, Leo.
Perfect. Right, sorry about that. We seem to be having enforced technical problems, just like a typical motor race. Right, the thing about that is actually there is a bit of a heartwarming story to this, and that is, as part of the program, this was on Employable Me, it was actually the guy concerned got a job, which was a great, at the company he was doing the software problems. Actually, we can send the slides in PDF format. So that is something I will check with Richie on, but we will see about that afterwards. Right, let's get back on afterwards. Excellent, that's all. We will, for those of you not watching the chat, we will be sending you the slide afterwards. So really, the key, all of these are positive things, but the reality is only 21.7% of autistic people are in employment, and that is below the combined rate for disabled people, which is 52.1%. So that's only 22% of people, autistic people, according to the latest statistics, which were lower than previous estimates. And 50% of autistic people said that support, understanding, or acceptance would be the single biggest thing to help them into employment. So we do, and here's something to actually think about. Autistic adults should be offered individualized support if they are having difficulty maintaining employment. Recruitment agencies can actually help with it by making sure that employers are aware of the adjustment that can help them get into employment. Because looking at these sort of statistics, the employers are pretty spooked about it. It's 68% of employers would worry about getting support wrong for an autistic employee. So that's why it's about reassuring people that actually they can come forward and pointing them in the direction of where they can get support. And don't forget about access to work, because joking aside about formulas, this getting a job can be a Grand Prix in itself for autistic people, and in the end, it's the constructors, or rather the employers, who lose out. And for instance, take this story about Callum Gamble. He actually launched his own digital agency, Creative Inc., in 2019. Just after he lost his first job, 3 weeks after starting it, due to a lack of understanding about autism. Now he's doing well for himself, but you know, the employer who lost him, think about what would have happened if history might have been different. That could have been an employee working well, who knows, maybe a few years from now, he'd probably, if he's a wish, either be a good specialist in that company or actually maybe leading its own in sort of partnership with it. You never know. But this is why we're here. And this should actually, for some of you, be the beginning of where you actually look around for of autistic and neurodiverse talent. We have a lot on our website that includes the stories from the spectrum section of our website, which shows a lot of different autistic people, whether a Navy admiral or your own tame autistic employee being interviewed for years ago. And actually, there's also Spectrum Live life stories, which shows 4 artists, and our own magazine for autistic members called The Spectrum. Otherwise, there's various different resources that you can learn about the neurodiversity movement as a whole. So this one, autistic community and the neurodiversity movement. And don't forget, there's various biographies and autobiographies of autistic people. We're prolific writers, including one person who's trying to get his own book published. Hint, hint. Thank you for the nice little introduction. By the way, if you do know of any tame publishers that want tame autistic fiction, that would, or meaty autistic fiction, that would be absolutely great. That's a shameless plug over with. Let's keep on going, because this is what you're here for, isn't it? Barriers to recruitment and simple adjustments. Okay, let's actually look at the recruitment barriers, because this is why this can be a race of Monaco-like proportions, starting off with the application form and CVs and covering letters. The gymnastics can catch people out. Lack of relevant experience. This is something that actually really can get a lot of autistic people. They might look at a job and think, yeah, actually this is good, but actually may not have the experience to qualify, particularly if they actually don't pick up work experience, something for or Sunday job, something that can be a big trap for neurodiverse and disabled people. Their tone might put people off, and they might not disclose. And that can create problems that mean they don't get the adjustment at interview process and beyond, so the employer doesn't understand and the autistic person loses out. The concept of selling yourself. This is difficult for autistic people because it's almost about effectively a form of not lying, but it almost comes close to it. And that can be really hard for some people to compute. And then you've got open, abstract, and hypothetical question as interview. It's sort of the vague sort of, autistic people can be very imaginative. I mean, we're good. We've got a few good science fiction or young adult thriller authors out there, but actually in the sort of imagining yourself in a situation or sort of not precise questions, that can catch people out and unfairly too. And eye contact, body language. We can be the most shifty, sort of weird and wonderful, inappropriate people on the surface. Actually, we're the nicest people you'll ever meet if you give us half a chance. And we're the most intelligent tool, if I may say so. I'm bragging a bit, but there you go. But the body language can seem weird, and it's something to ignore. And telephone interviews. Any autistic people in this room? It's only been a few days since Halloween, but if you're putting telephone interviews, for some people, picking up on the tone of voice, calling an unknown person, it's always Halloween for them. So, with all that out of the way, let's go to recruitment adjustment, shall we? Okay, from the start, clear job description and clear, precise language tone. Really be crystal clear on how to do the actual application form or what's going to happen in the form. Make sure your process is accessible, and make sure your language at every step of the way is friendly but direct about what will happen, what are the questions, that kind of thing. An interview adjustment. Provide detailed information about the interview. Who will the person? Who will that person meet? How long will it last for? What will be the sort of question they will be asked? Know when to help and know what to ignore. For instance, eye contact. Avoid worrying about that. Give extra time to process and prompt to give more information. Do think about the environment, and if a person struggled with a question, then actually rephrase it and avoid hypothetical questions. And if you might want to have a mentor or translator acting as someone who's in the room to sort of explain things from the person and from you. But also, last but not least, you might make a lot of disabled people very happy this way. Consider a work trial. Interviews don't always work well for everyone, and there will be some people who actually might be better at portfolio and just showing you what they can do rather than telling you. That's almost a nice writer's tip too. Anyway, is this evil video working? Apologies, guys. We've had a bit of the wacky. We've had a bit of the wacky.
It's working, Leo.
Ah, right.
I'll let you know when it's finished. That's finished, Leo.
Right. Definitely wacky races. Let's go onward. So, how to be a good colleague or manager, and what's happened here? I think there is a bit of tech. There is just a bit of a problem. So let me bounce back and then sort of yeah. Never mind. It's sort of, this is what happened. So really, this is something you can send to new employers. These are top tips which we're trying to spread around just as much as we are trying to spread around the worst kept secret by the government, access to work. So really, seriously, thinking about structure and planning is key, including in the recruitment process. What should they be doing and when, and what they shouldn't do, try to do, as well as what they may do outside of their standard duty. I've given you a brilliant point for how to think about job descriptions. Use it. Think about changing priorities and ad hoc or reactive tasking. This could be something to point out would be what can vary in a job. Half of the stuff that happens is variable in certain positions. So actually, maybe it's a good interview question, but also it's something for you to sort of think about there, and making sure that good relationships are built too. So as a person settles in before they set foot in the office. And don't forget to phase in new information. It is easy for me being at Shinkansen Force to blast you with information, but actually I might stun an autistic employee if I tried that or sort of overloaded someone. So these are worth thinking about the points, because we give them to managers and colleagues when we're doing the 3-hour version of this training. But actually, these are the things we should be talking about right from the outset, okay? And here's something. Not everything is linked to being autistic. What are their personality like? Male or female gender leads to different autistic experiences, and not just developmental ones, for instance. What have their defining life experiences been up until this point? For example, have they come off a string of victories and not been tested against the current, so they don't know what that's like? Or have they had too much against the current that they're not sure of themselves? Some autistic people can be very sort of insular or sort of less strong in their sense of self. Can be a question of have they had a lot of support or not a lot of support at all. Something that's really early diagnosed people can have a lot of support, but late diagnosed people, they might have had to figure it all out themselves before being diagnosed. A lot of autistic people have been bullied, and I should have the statistics to hand, I don't, but it's something that can really be actually a major problem for confidence and sense of self too. And are they a carer, or do they have an autistic partner or child? It can affect their views on their own condition, and might I add, be something that affects them in sort of disclosing. So there you go. And look, neurodiversity is part of diversity. So remember, there are other different factors that come in and other different identities. Race, for instance, the National Autistic Society, we've been actually doing a lot of that. We released a statement on Black History Month. So there you go. It's always something to be aware of. And really, these are the 3 C's for an autism-friendly workplace. And here's the thing, again, it's also an autism-friendly selection process too. Clear communication. What sensory adjustment might someone need? And challenge yourself to think differently. So if a colleague or if someone who's being interviewed or going through any form of selection process doesn't communicate in a way that you expect, how can you be more accommodating of that difference? And how can the employers you work with be too? So here are some more resources, including information to the Autism at Work page. And we also did 2 recorded broadcasts on our main Spectrum Live program. I really, for recruitment purposes, recommend looking at the first one, looking for employment, and then actually checking out the second one to give you an idea of the challenges in the workplace. So we do have other sort of resources and services, and actually advice and guidance for employers and recruiters is one of them, along with workplace assessments and actually our autism in the workplace training, which is a combination of online, live and modular courses. too. And we have our jobs board, which you can actually point to autistic job seekers. And actually, last but not least, and this is something you might want to push forward, is our Finding Employment module, which is a free online module for autistic job seekers and employees. Maybe some of you might look at it afterwards just to sort of get an insight into some of the challenges that can be faced and some of the advice that's actually being given out. And right, that's me sort of past the white flag. The checkered flag will be an open forum with any questions you may have.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Leo. That was an excellent talk. Great content. I applaud your F1 levels of banter as well throughout, to be fair. Impressive. So any questions from anyone at all? Looks like we've got one there actually. Do you want to shout out?
Hi, it's Abby. I was just really insightful, so thank you for that presentation. I'm 48 and I've recently been diagnosed with Asperger's, so I feel like I finally found the jigsaw piece in my life and the quest is over and I can live freely now, because I relate to a lot of those challenges that Leo has just highlighted, and to do that without knowing and struggling is a real challenge. So thank you. I was just wondering, tomorrow I've got an appointment with my occupational health provider at my workplace, and in light of my diagnosis, I'm just wondering whether there's any kind of resources that I could share with the occupational health people that you've mentioned about those sensory adjustments.
The best advice I'd give you is to go to our website and check it out. I do know there is information on sensory adjustment, and there might, I don't want to overreach, be things for professionals that you could get your hands upon and maybe send the links to them, or if you're meeting in face-to-face, print out and hand over to them.
Okay. We do have, I'm just thinking, we do have a reasonable adjustments worksheet actually that I could share with you. If you're happy to share, your email address, I can send that over to you.
I'll just put it in the chat, shall I?
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's great.
And good luck.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Looks like we might be anything else at all in chat or?
I've got a question for Leo. If like when it comes to kind of through the hiring process, if you don't if you're in a situation where the candidate doesn't necessarily want to disclose that they have autism, how would you recommend potentially like confirming that to then make those adjustments to suit the process for them, or should we not address it at all?
Don't forget the anticipatory duty of the Equality Act. If a person shows signs that they might be disabled, whether it's autism or any other condition, that employer has you have a duty to make the adjustment. You might not get them all right, but it's about making sure that you think about what might they need. For instance, if someone was, let's say, showing, well, they weren't, let's say, openly diagnosed, but with their diagnosis, but they were saying avoiding eye contact, then that's still not on them. That's on you to make that adjustment. It's the same thing with, let's say, the bright with, let's say, bright lights. It's also, if it's clear and obvious that that person is being affected by the light, it's not about on them to say, I am openly diagnosed. It's on the employer to quietly make that sort of adjustment.
Perfect. That's really useful. Thanks, Leo.
Cool. Looks like we might be all done. So thank you again for the talk. Round of applause from us, Leo. Cracking presentation. To be fair, one of the best we've had so far. And we're going to share the recording after the event. Sarah will work her magic and then share it out on the meetup page, LinkedIn page, and I'm sure directly from Michelle as well. We'll get that out for everyone to review. Thank you very much, everyone. Enjoy the rest of your day. Great presentation, and look forward to seeing you again soon.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.